Welcome back to another Streamline Verify video. This is a series where we have pulled together some thoughts for you on hot topics in the compliance space for the healthcare practitioner of 2023. Today's episode is going to be one that's very dear to my heart. It is to do with the job market, bettering ourselves, our career mapping as compliance practitioners. Thank you so much for having me, Stephen.
Mary, it's a pleasure. Welcome back. So far, I've been love doing the series together with you. So I'm excited about this topic. And sadly, we get asked so many times about this topic from some of the users. We're fortunate to have many users, and I wish I could do more to help them out. But this is something that, like you said, is dear to your heart. It's also dear to my heart. Let's see what we can cover and some tips that you can give back to the community. So I know that you
Sure.
personally were job hunting recently, and I know you're about to move out to California. It's a lot of fun to take up a new role out there. So congrats on that. Let
Thank
us know
you.
how that works. And it's switching to the warm weather, so that's nice. So I'm sure many folks are interested to hear about what the market is like for a healthcare professional and for a compliance professional and compliance officer and related to our space in our industries. What were your observations about job hunting at this particular time, and what tips do you have for others that are looking to advance themselves in the compliance space?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I would say is my empathy and commiserations to any of our technology colleagues in the space who have been the victim of layoffs. That's certainly put a dampener on the market. I think it's very fair to say. In the healthcare space, we are seeing, I think, quite a bit of ongoing momentum and activity. And I was observing this in terms of colleague and friend movements at the end of 2022. It seemed to be that a lot of individuals in our space were transitioning and really able to improve their financial positions, which I always would give a big thumbs up to. And so I think we're still seeing that and experiencing it. This is particularly at senior director and below. I think we see a lot of opportunities at this point in time. So if you're thinking about potentially having a look for something new, this particular time I think is a good one for healthcare, life sciences, medical device, and pharma. And I'd also say some helpful advice that was given to me in terms of expectation setting. If you're looking at the highest level in terms of managing the compliance function and program, it may be that you're looking for some time. A year is not out of the ordinary at the CCO type level. And if I ask you to think of it like a pyramid, there's only so many of those roles at the top and so many people going for them. So don't be discouraged if it does take a little while, and really try to consider your situation before you're in a situation of desperation. Don't wait for that opportunity. I think in compliance programs, we are told to actively monitor and review. Continuous improvement is what we do in our day job, but how often are we introspective, reflective, contemplative about our very own career mapping and asking ourselves if we're truly content where we are, and if where we are is actually where we want to be, and what do we want to be in 1 to 2 years' time, and are we on the right path to getting there? And in terms of this compensation point, I would also suggest that one of the things that I noticed in the last little while is that salary bands seem to have moved up quite a bit, I think to reflect the inflation that we've been experiencing, not just in the United States, but globally. Everywhere I go and every friend that I talk to in a different country, one thing we seem to have in common right now is complaining about the price of eggs. So fortunately,
Haven't
employ
came down though, Mary, so we're in a good place. We'll see how long that lasts.
That's not a good reason to not go for higher in your salary, though. So, really keep an eye on the benchmarking surveys where you can have free and frank conversations with friends. One of the things that I think is the case in many cultures is that we are very uncomfortable discussing money. It's not a seemingly appropriate dinner party conversation opener to ask someone how much money they earn, what's their salary. But a group of friends and I thought that we would be brave and have this unconventional discussion and share our salaries for some benchmarking information. And I found that to be really helpful. And one thing to keep in mind is that, women are known to have lower salaries. So, where you can, try not to compare yourself just with women for this information, but with men as well, because that's going to give you a more holistic picture in terms of that benchmarking information. So, if you're not sure how to broach the conversation, share this video with your friends to see if that'll give you a gentle opener into having these courageous conversations.
That's amazing. That's interesting stuff that you guys went ahead and sat around the dinner table and shared that amongst each other. I can't say I would do the same. Sort of an ego thing, right? So, on the same topic, what are your thoughts about using, there's a lot of these resume writing services
Mm-hmm.
that help people with their search, and there are a lot of people that try to assist. And um, what are your thoughts about using them to possibly get you shortlisted, for a job?
That's a great question. I had been wondering for many years. I follow some people on LinkedIn who are sort of the thought leaders for some of these organizations. And I always thought, wow, yeah, I love it. I love what they're advocating for, more money, salary transparency. So loving the salary transparency trends that we're seeing. Some of them are by law, but some companies have now started picking up on them as just, because it's the right thing to do, to share the salary at the outset. So loving that going on. And so I thought, kind of in the interest of science, I might give it a go to try two different services and sort of compare and contrast my experiences. So with one company, I did a resume review service, which is where you send your resume in and they give feedback based on what your content already is and encourage you to change things up in certain ways. The second service that I selected was a resume rewrite service, which is where you are interviewed by the company and then they help you to rewrite that. The document so that it's got better keyword search hits so that it really puts your best foot forward. And I will say I was horribly disappointed with both. And so, if you're sitting on the precipice right now trying to decide whether to take the leap and spend a whole lot of money, so I spent $250 on the resume review and an $800 package for the resume rewrite. So, this is not an insignificant amount of money. And I feel very regretful. So, I'm hoping that this information that I share today, in terms of what you might like to consider before doing this yourself, might be helpful to you. So I think the critical thing to do is don't just go off the thought leadership like I did. I thought these people looked like experts, professionals. What they were saying sounded amazing. And it was only later that with one of them in particular, when I started doing research, like using their company name and the word scam, and looking them up on Better Business Bureau, did I see that a lot of people had the same experience as me, which is that they received a document that had English as a second language errors, typos, and was almost certainly written by someone very, very junior who wasn't best placed to do this resume rewrite. However, I will say, and I'll give myself a pat on the back for this, I tried to keep an open mind. And despite that, I tidied up the objective errors, the things that were spelt incorrectly, turned it into how an organic, or sorry, if English as a first language speaker would put it, if it's your mother tongue. And I used this resume for a while to see if, in fact, it would dazzle everybody and I'd be hitting all the keywords and coming up. And I will say that it did not seem to help me get any more shortlists compared with when I'd used my original resume. Another point that I'll share on this topic is that I had done some research and read that some people discourage you from using sort of very fancy designed, sort of graphic design resumes that maybe are infographic style. And I did get one of those designs. And the reason why people say that it's not so desirable is that it could be problematic for the applicant tracking system to pick it up, because the tracking systems don't usually use that they don't necessarily interpret or read the information correctly. But what I found was that when submitting the graphic design resume, I did get shortlisted, and even had individuals who were interviewing me provide unsolicited positive feedback that they really loved my resume. So, I mean, I'd say this with caution, to use it where you can. If you're a little scared about the ATS system not picking up your design so well, um, try to save that for when you're sending your resume to people who are willing to refer you by email. But also remember that Workday, for example, they make you retype your work experience anyway. So even if your resume has read 100% completely, they still then make the second step of the application process after the upload to then retype. So your information is probably going to get there in the end. So I would say consider using something that's a little different to help set you apart, make it easier on the eye from others.
And I saw a lot of times, a lot of sometimes it's like when you see, for me, like the nuances are, particularly like if someone doesn't send it to me as a PDF, it's a Word document, like that's basics for me. Like sort of like, keep that professionalism in it, but like simplistic. That's, professional and simple. And while you were talking, I got to thinking, what about choosing the right reference? When you're
Mm.
looking for a job, so getting that right reference, like if someone, unbeknown to you, you may have someone that's bad now than you while you're looking for that experience. Really, they could have just possibly had a bad interaction with you, and you really are a rock star. Like, what's
Hmm.
your thoughts about choosing the right references when you're looking for a job?
You mean choosing the right references to provide when they ask for someone to speak on you?
What?
Yeah. Yeah, I always think that, even if all of your bosses sing your praises to the fullest, there are always going to be some people who present better and communicate better than others. So, one of the things that I do is also keep an ear out for people who, when I tell my former bosses that I'm job hunting, if someone says, "Oh, and I will absolutely be happy to be a reference for you," right? That's great, because it tells you that they're going to say very positive things about you. They're willing
Yeah.
to set aside the time. They're very enthusiastic about it. And
No,
yeah, so you're pretty confident. So if you're not sure about whether it could go either way with a certain boss, try to, instead of asking them about whether they'll give you a reference, let them know that you're in the final stages of a process, and see what their reaction is towards you. Are they offering lots of helpful mentoring advice? They seem vested in you and your success, and if so, that's a pretty good tip to select them. And then also just think
yeah.
back to who presents well on stage. Oftentimes, people have a natural born talent and others work on it really hard. Those types of people are going to be, frankly, able to come off better than others, just
Mhm.
because they sound so confident, they speak well, they're able to think about the critical ways in which help you put your best foot forward. So people that are very strategic and thoughtful, and above all, they want the best for you. Those are the references that I would choose.
Very often. Yeah, it's true. There's a famous phrase: "Build your network before you need it." I know that you have a tremendous network of people that you interact with. How, on a personal level, did you call on your network to help you with your search?
Absolutely. One of the best tools, I think, probably everybody knows this, but I'll just restate it for level setting and completeness, is that on LinkedIn, you can see which of your connections work at a certain organization. So use that tool and see if there's anybody. Ideally, the best case scenario is going to be individuals who like you and have worked with you before, because then they're able to attest to your capabilities in the workplace. Then there are people who may not be able to do that, but they may be able to get you really helpful information. So, for example, somebody who's already on the compliance team there, that you might know from, let's say, you met them at a conference. 8 months ago, hit them up and say, hey, I was really interested in this role. And you may also learn something like the internal person saying, oh, actually, I've applied for this role as well. And that's really helpful information because a lot of the time internal candidates are given the preference, but for whatever reason, companies feel like they have to advertise externally. Some need to do it by law, and some need to do it because of internal policy. So it's quite helpful information if there's already someone in mind. But maybe it's someone who's not going for the role, but they really liked you and they want to advocate for you getting this role. They might be able to help get your resume in front of the relevant talent acquisition business partner so that you don't risk going through the dodgy ATS systems and chancing, basically rolling the dice on whether you hit the right keywords or not, or the AI is going in your favor. And they might be able to give you some information that'll help you understand the pain points that the compliance program is going through. Maybe the reason why the last person left to help you understand as to whether you even want that job or not, or something that that last person wasn't successful in that you are good at and can emphasize in your job hunt process. So the one thing that I would say for job seekers is be careful what you ask for people. It's very unfair to ask for someone to be a reference for you in terms of your work product if they've never worked with you before. I do occasionally get this, and have to offer to the person interested in the role. I'm afraid I can't help you out in that respect as we've not worked together before. But I'd be happy to sit on a call with you to help walk you through some of the things about the organization that might be interesting or about the compliance department that could be helpful for you to know that might help with your application. And the one exception that I would say here is that sometimes I have seen people who I've not worked with before on LinkedIn do very thoughtful analysis, and they're quite well-known thought leaders in the space. And because I've been able to see their work in another context or their intellectual capacity, I may not be able to say to the talent acquisition person or the hiring manager that I know, hey, I've worked with them before and they're great. I can say, hey, I've been keeping an eye on this individual and their thought leadership is top notch. They really seem to know what they're talking about in the data privacy space or whatever it is that is relevant to the role. So obviously, best case scenario is utilizing the people that can speak positively and for you and advocate for you in the workplace context. But don't forget about individuals that you may be able to tap to get helpful information to help you come across as a stronger candidate or even help you get shortlisted and more present in the shortlisting process.
Great, valuable information. You know what I find amazing about this space in particular? I mean, it could be it's other in other areas as well. I feel like the thought leaders, they're so willing to help and mentor people that are trying to come into the space or even people that are juniors in the space to help them climb that ladder. So I find it truly remarkable. And I believe it's different in this space than other space. I think, someone like you wants to pass on and help others succeed, and you're not only looking out for yourself versus, in some other spaces, people are always looking that they themselves should climb the ladder and they don't really care about others. And I think in compliance, it's a totally different, there's respect for your peers like no other space.
I couldn't agree more. And that is one of the reasons why my podcast co host, Lisa Fine, and I, why we called our book Sending the Elevator Back Down. It was such a prominent theme in the successful women that we've interviewed for our discussions that it couldn't not be front and center. And so I think we're absolutely aligned on that. And I'm so thankful and grateful to
Yeah,
be in the space for those who have helped me because I certainly didn't achieve a single thing on my own.
it's amazing. Good stuff. Thanks, Mary, again for your time. We appreciate it. And
Thank you, Stephen.